Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sai, and I'll be moderating today's session. I request the audience to keep their microphones on mute unless you want to ask a question. Hi, sir. It is a pleasure connecting with you virtually. Before we start with the session, I would like to give a small introduction about the speaker. Kapil Joshi is the head of experience design practice at Capgemini FS SBU. He is an HFI certified usability analyst with 17 years of experience in UX designing, with strong analytical and designing skills in enterprise, web, and mobile application. He is responsible to manage and deliver user experience engagements for Capgemini Financial Services SBU. With his collaborative approach to work amongst teams of multiple disciplines, he has worked at customer locations in India, North America, and United Kingdoms. He also has expertise in persona building, storyboarding, customer journey, and information architecture. We are glad to have you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Sai, for the nice introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. As Sai has already introduced myself, so without wasting time, I think we have very limited time. I just wanted to start the conversation with a positive note that to be honest, when I was studying, I never got such a opportunity where I can meet industry experts or seniors, or maybe the SMEs in various domains to interact and know the real situation, how we are going to work when we get graduate or when we complete our programs. So I think this is a very good opportunity where online we are connecting to hundreds of people sitting in various locations. So first of all, I would like to wish you a very happy new year. Happy Sankranti, happy Pongal, happy Lohri. I think recently we celebrated all this festival across India, and I believe a lot of you have been in various part of the country. So as Sai introduced, my core responsibility in Capgemini's financial business unit is we basically cater our services to banking and insurance folks. Now, I know a lot of people think, and that was my perception almost like 12, 15 years before that, banking and insurance is very boring domain. It's only of related to money. You need a strong background on the accountancy and insurance, but yeah, that you really need some strong background. You should know that domain. But believe me, it's a very interesting subject. You can change anything using design. You can bring innovation, all the innovation which are coming these days, especially in the payment banks. For example, Google Pay everyone is using. In last 10 months, India has gone digitally in such a way that from a small shop, from a pani puri wala to a big mall, everyone is expecting payment on all this wallet, especially on Google Pay. So you can imagine how design and mixture of technology can change the entire innovation in various industry. Banking and insurance are actually complex. There are multiple ways. I'll quickly share my screen, and probably I'll try to give an overview on how banking and other industries are different. Just let me know when you're able to see my screen.
It's visible, sir.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Okay, so this is a topic which we will be covering in next 50-55 minutes. The introduction, Sai has introduced me. First part is overview on the financial services. I will give you a quick view on that, how financial services are segregated. There are various terminology in the IT industry. A lot of people call as BFSI domain. Basically, BFSI stands for banking, financial, and insurance industry. We in Capgemini or in a lot of the other area of BFSI, we call it a financial service or FS. I'll give you a segregation that how FS or financial services are distributed. What are the various subdomains of within banking and insurance? Then I'll show you a very interesting area, like how the latest trends are changing the banking domain. What are the latest trends, and probably we all are using some of those features in our day-to-day life. Moving on, I'll try to help give a little bit knowledge on the user experience. I'm sure you guys are students of design, and a lot of other senior colleagues and industry experts have already given you a lot of information. I'll not take much time on that, but I would like to bring some key aspect of user experience, that how we can change to create a world-class digital solutions that covers the various activities of the usability analysis, the entire process, how we implement the user experience design in a typical software development life cycle, whether it's a web-based application or a mobile-based application. And then the most important part, which I thought that might be an interesting for all of you guys, is the 10 heuristic design principle. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that, but these are the 10 key principle invented long back in early 90s by Jacob Nielsen of NN Group, which is one of the uh, uh, renowned usability practitioner company. They also do a lot of certification, very known certification in the industry, and following by some examples of those heuristic in our day-to-day life, and especially in a financial sector. And lastly, we'll have some small 10 to 15 minutes Q&A session where I'll try to answer your question. I wanted to make it more interactive, so I will request you that after every stage, after every section, if you have some queries or if you want to have more detailed understanding, you please you can stop me anytime, and I can answer at least one or two guys' questions. So moving on to the overview of financial services. So banking domain, financial industry is divided into two parts, banking and insurance. Now, banking, you can see I've tried to segregate retail banking, which is the key banking which we use in our day-to-day life. Like everyone have saving accounts, and a lot of people have student accounts. Like you guys might be having student accounts with the help of your parents. So that's called retail banking, the banking which you are doing right now. For example, if you are transferring money to your friends, or your parents are transferring money to you, you are doing your bill payments, you are doing your mobile and internet payments, all this is a retail banking. Whatever you do into day-to-day life, it's called as a retail banking. Corporate banking is same, but more preferred to the industries, the organization, where they do a lot of transaction in terms of their salaries, in terms of business, B2B business, where they have to do a lot of huge payments. So that's called corporate banking. Stock and commodity, probably you might be aware of stock exchange, how stocks and this capital market goes on. So that is also part of BFSI, or especially in the banking domain. Asset and wealth management, this is a very complex domain where people invest their money, and they try to save, do a long-term investment. They purchase a lot of shares, they purchase a lot of, invest into mutual funds. So asset and wealth management basically for your saving, and there are a lot of financial institutes who help with these kind of portfolios to be held in various sector. One of the key user group for asset wealth management is HNI, the high net individuals, who are the big tycoons who invest a lot of monies in various stocks. So that is also very important user groups in asset and wealth management. Then cards and payments. Card and payments is basically the credit cards. We have credit cards, we do a lot of credit card shopping, we convert into AMIs, and we also take a lot of loans. All these cards give various facilities these days. And payments, again, the loans, the mortgage systems which we do whenever we want to take. Investment banking, again, it is a very different sector, targeted outside India. It's very known, especially in the North America and Europe market. So these are some key domains. There are more subdomains, in each of this section, but I'll not, take much detail, because I know it's very boring for many of the guys. But you can, anytime, Google it, how banking domain works, and probably based on your interest, you'll understand that. moving on to life insurance now. Moving on to insurance, sorry. There's two sections. One is life insurance, like all of us or our parents have the, our life insurance provided by LIC or, other HDFC, ICICI, all, leading life insurance provider. But there is non-life insurance also, the insurance for our vehicle, insurance for our health, the health insurance for our property. There are a lot of, packages these time comes when you can, claim for your accident. So that is called as non-life products. So one is life insurance, second is non-life products. And then policy sales, underwriting, policy servicing, claims, first notice of loss, this is known as FNOL. These are some, uh, 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 some processes within the insurance. For example, policy sales. So whenever agents or, any insurance companies, do their marketing of their policies, or they sell their policies through their online portals or mobile apps, or, why physically when we go to any company. So that's the application which generally, IT company design for policy sale, that is known as policy sales. Underwriting is an process where once we purchase the insurance, and when we provide a lot of information to them, like our demographic details, our health records, our address proofs, what kind of, premium we are able to pay, what kind of return we want after a couple of years, let's say 10, 15 or 20, based on our investment. So once we provide this information to any insurance company, it goes to a team which is known as underwriting team. These are the, experts who basically, based on the market standard, based on whatever data you have provided, based on your income, they have a, predefined formula or a calculation, and then they give a returns to you that, if you pay 2,000 rupees every month, after 10 years you will get, X amount, X crore rupees, in various scenarios. There are a lot of conditions applied to that. So that's the, I would say, heart of any insurance process. The underwriting, they have an ability to either approve your policy or reject your policy. Policy serving is basically, whenever you purchase any policy, and then you have to pay premium either quarterly, half yearly, or every year. So that process is called policy servicing. So every time you will get a notification from your banks or insurance company that your premium is due, so you have to pay that premium, accordingly, whatever option of payment you have chosen, either it's monthly, quarterly, half yearly, or yearly. Claims, it is very simple. Whenever you claim anything, let's say you have a policy for your vehicle, and unfortunately you met with an accident, so you will be claiming the damage controls. So that process is called as claims. Claim is also very much used in the healthcare industry, especially in the health policies where you are, suffering from any disease, or you are, medically, unfit, you did some operations, for women's, for maternity, all the organizations, to provide this policy, and you can claim that amount based on your package of your policy. So claims is very important. First notice of loss is known as FNOL. This is a very, very important process whenever you, unfortunately meet with any accident. As a mandate process, you have to inform to the insurer company that you met with an accident, and you have to take a lot of pictures, you have to collect a lot of, evidence that you met with an accident, you have to do a complaint, lodge a complaint in a police station. So all those information needs to be, updated to the insurance company. In today's world, a lot of insurance company doesn't have a online channel for this. There is a manual process. You have to call center, inform those things. But the change which is happening in the industry, that everyone is going digital. So this service is also going, digital, especially on the mobile sector. So this is an overall brief of the, banking and insurance industry. Every IT company or every banking and insurance company, they have applications for all these various services. For retail banking, like anytime if you open any website of, let's say, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, I'm just giving an example, they will have a net banking. So that comes into, retail banking. If you open any website of ICICI Lombard, LIC Policies, Life Insurance Corporation of India, or any other, leading, there are multiple policy like Bajaj Insurance and all those. If you go to their website, you will see a product catalog. They will be, showcasing their various policies, right? Either a life insurance policy, or a non-life product, which I explain, like health, property, or motor. So this is very very basic, overview on that, I thought of, giving this knowledge to you guys, because maybe after a couple of years when uh, you will be, in your campus, when you will be hired by IT companies or design studios, someone might help, option to, provide design solution for banking industry. So this might help, but you have to do a lot of research. You have to do a lot of self learning in this domain. Moving on to next part, these are some latest trends in the banking industry. For an example, I have chosen the key 8 trends which is going in industry since couple of years. Cardless ATM withdrawals. I'm not sure if you are aware that these days we don't need to carry cards to ATM. There are a lot of new banks, especially Axis Bank, DBS. These are some banks in India. IndusInd Bank. These banks provide an option to withdraw money without your ATM card. So what you have to do, you have to open your mobile app, and then you have to choose an option to ATM withdraw. It gives you an OTP which comes on your mobile, and immediately you can access your ATM without your card. So that's an innovation. But this entire process has a very technology driven customer experience, and again, user experience is very important part of that, because you will be having this feature in your mobile, and how seamlessly that option is visible on a mobile. That's the key of UX process. Biometric authentication, you guys are aware that all the apps are secured, either by face recognition, or by password protection, or by thumb impression, based on your phone or based on the technology which is supported by your bank. The authentications is very important these days. Many banks in India also, they have voice banking, uh, uh, where and that came in this pandemic last 10 months. This feature was very much in demand, where we were locked down. We are not able to go outside. So voice banking is very important. Was very important these days, because you can do a lot of banking activity virtually through video conference from your mobile phone. So user experience comes there also, that how easily you can interact with your banker, you can solve your queries, because in India, and especially in North American and European countries, there are some feature for which you have to go to bank. For an example, to update your address, to apply for a loan, to provide the documents. So that is a traditional process which is going on from ages. But since last couple of years, all the banks and the insurance companies, they are trying to convert those traditional processes into an digital based innovation. Now how this is going to be digital, this will be either through your website or through your mobile. And most of the banks prefer mobile as the first option, because around 60 to 65% of user groups across world use mobile phones, and they use mobile phone in such an extent that they don't prefer to go to a website. That's why responsive web design is very important. That's why mobile app is very important for these kind of company, so that their end customer like us should be happy. We should have a seamless user experience across channels, whether it's a mobile app or whether it's a net banking through webs. Machine learning, this is more technical. Machine learning is an RPA based technology in IT industry, where automatically there's an algorithm which is written in the websites or mobile apps, where you, based on your activity, based on your interest, automatically bank will provide you some information. For an example, if you open Make My Trip, and if you look for a ticket from Bombay to Goa, and then you close that browser immediately, the next time when you open, you will see by default your destination is Goa and your source is Bombay. And you will see a lot of emailers coming in on your email ID if you have provided, or if you provided your mobile phone mobile number, you will get a lot of SMS. So that is called digital marketing. And that all this process is happening because you visited to their website, you provided your information, and based on that information, and if your privacy policies are on, these companies follow your entire activity through your IP address. And then based on your interest, they will change the layout of the website, or they will make more user friendly application. For example, if you open Make My Trip app, you have to choose source and destination, or these days, by default, based on your IP or based on your location, it will select your location. For example, right now I'm in Pune, I will see by default Pune, but the destination I have to select. But if I frequently, searching tickets for any location, let's say I'm looking for a ticket from Pune to Jaipur, automatically, next time they will give me an option of, various deals. So that's called digital marketing. And when you open the mobile app, and all these features are pre-filled, and that is the user experience. I don't need to, select the destination. I don't need to select the source. Automatically, everything is coming. Only there are few, selection, for example, the dates, the how many people are traveling. So, but there is a less clicks. You don't need to, click multiple time, and that's the, beauty of the user experience. So this kind of activity happens based on the machine learning and based on the data which you provide to your mobile phone or through your browsers. Omni-channel experience. So omni-channel means uh, uh, a website or a digital product of any company in various channels. So for an example, a bank, or let me give you an example of Amazon. So you have an Amazon website, you have an Amazon mobile app, you have a small wearable device also for Apple iWatch or other Samsung watch in Amazon. So basically all the companies who are having applications for all channel, whether it's a desktop, whether it's a web-based application or it's a mobile apps or it's a wearable devices app. So that's experience is called an omni-channel. So and that's the user experience. If you open Amazon on your website, you will see a very seamless experience. The same experience is continued in the Amazon app, which is installed on your phone. So that's called the omni-channel experience. And a lot of companies are targeting omni-channel because today everyone is they're using mobile, they're using tablets. A lot of people have big screen phones. So the layout gets changes. The layout is responsive based on a device. The layout changes. And then here is the area where you have to improve the user experience. So there is a approach which is known as mobile first strategy. So for an example, if you open any website in a browser, let's say Google Chrome, from your standard laptop, you will see a lot of information. But the same website, if you open from a mobile, and mobile have limited real estate, so you cannot zoom it, because it's a responsive. All the applications, all the websites are responsive based on the available space on your mobile devices. The layout is going to change. But what kind of information will come there? Whether you will have, let's say if you open Times of India on your website, you will see the headlines, you will see the the news of Bollywood, you will see some advertisement, then you will see the city section. But when you open the Times of India from your mobile, you have a very limited space. So what you will see, so there they apply the mobile first approach or mobile first strategy, like what user want to see on the mobile. So obviously from a news portal, I would like to see the headline first. I'm not interested to see the Bollywood news or other sections of that particular news portal. Same way in the banking sector, when I open any bank's website or when I open any insurance website, I will see a typical marketing website which talks about their various products, it talks about some offer which is going on in insurance sector. But when I open their website from a mobile, again my interest is, if I open a website, my interest is to go to log in to do my banking transaction. So I should be able to see the login button up front. Probably I have very less space, and if I'm using a mobile apps, then by default it should show me my summary of my account, how much money I have, what are the various bill which is due. So we have to change our design strategy based on the device. The design approach for a mobile app would be different. The design approach for a responsive application for mobile view will be different. For tablet it will be slightly similar to the web, and web is completely different. So a lot of time what happened, people go from top to bottom, like whatever you see on the browser in a desktop, you will stagger all information, and you will just move below each other. But that's a wrong approach. Ideally you should start from bottom to top, like for what will be information which will come on your mobile, then tablet, and then your website. So these are some strategies or approach which we implement during the omni-channel execution for any domain. Like I'm talking about banking and insurance, but any domain. If you open a retail website, the same approach is there. Automated process. These are some process where RPA is implemented. Like in today's world, everyone wants to save clicks. They don't want to visit bank. So whatever information, whatever activity you wanted to do from your mobile. For an example, if you want to change your address, you have moved from one place to another, or you have changed your mobile number, and mobile number is very important because your OTP comes on mobile. So what used to happen, if you have to do these kind of changes, you have to physically go to bank and then provide a lot of supporting documents like your new address, maybe your rent agreement, or if you have your own property, you have to show your other documents which says that this is your address, some kind of stamp paper. You have to physically go to bank. But what now the solutions are building in such a way that you don't need to go to bank. You just upload. You just take a picture from your mobile and upload those documents, all those proofs from your banks. Automatically, they will review in a couple of hours, and your number will be changed or your address will be changed. So these kind of automated processes are getting implemented in, especially in the banking and in, insurance, because all the other industries are far ahead in terms of digital technology, whether it's retail industry or automobile. But banks were following the traditional way of doing banking, but now, based on the demand of the digital technology, based on the usage of the mobile phone. Again, I'm saying based on the usage of the mobile phone, the technology or is mandate for these banks and insurance companies. They are forced to apply. I'll give a recent example. HDFC Bank is one of the private bank in India, and HDFC Group has HDFC Home Loan, which is actually almost like 40 years old financial institute which provides home loans in private sector. So they have a very good customer segment. But what happened when this pandemic came, they realized that their digital solution, all their mobile apps, all their websites, they are not enough to cater the services. The customer has to visit to their offices in various cities. But as compared to HDFC, all the other their competitor, whether it's ICICI, Axis Bank, or all private banks in India, they were much ahead in terms of digital technology. They were having all this feature upfront in their mobile apps. So that's why financial institutes are forced to apply this digital technology. And wherever you have a digital technology, your user experience come to a picture, and people like us, designer like us, we help them to improve their processes. I'll just move on quickly. Rich micro interaction. These are very, very similar. If you open any of mobile apps, you will see, chatbot option. You will see small icons where you can export, you can, print. So these are small micro interaction, and that helps user to, gives luxury to, play around with that particular task with multiple options. So for example, if you are looking a banking statement, or if you are looking, let's say in Amazon, you're looking some products, you like that. So what you will do, you will, there is option to, share to your friends and family through share button. You can save for future, you can add to cart. So these are called micro interaction. So if you give this kind of, small micro interaction in your any solution, in any domain, your experience improves. The end user, is very happy. Okay, my website or my application gives me so much of, information that I should, it's very easy for me. Lastly, the very important section, that is the section which I'm going to talk for next 10-15 minutes, the heuristic based design system. So as I said, Jacob Nielsen created this key heuristic principles in early 90s, and these are very, very important principles whenever you design any products, any website, whether it's a web application, enterprise application, mobile apps, hybrid apps, native apps. You have to implement these principles. 70 to 80% these principles are very, very important in today's world. It helps user to have a better experience. It reduces two important factors of the usability. One is cognitive load, and second is motor load. So I'll explain you what is cognitive and motor load in next two sessions. I'll quickly go to the next section. But before that, I just wanted to have a 2 minutes pause. If any one of you have any question related to banking, insurance, about all these trends, or if you think that I am going very fast. Any questions, Sai, from you or any other? Shall I move, Sai?
No, so nothing from me. Does anyone else have any questions?
Okay, fine. I think we have a Q&A session at the end, so probably people might have some questions at the end. So now let's come to the important part, UX, which is you all of you are learning design. But I'm not sure whether if you are aware of cognitive load and motor load. Based on my experience and based on what we have been doing in industry and how we are helping various customers, I think usability is basically minimizing the cognitive load and the motor load. Now, cognitive load is basically the load on your brain. Whenever you open any application, forget about application, whenever you do any task at your home, in your office, or even when you play sports, there is a load on your brain. You wanted to think what I'll be doing. So for an example, if you open just 1 minute. Yeah, so for an example, if you open Amazon and if you wanted to see any product which you are searching, for example, if you want to search new accessories for iPhone 12, so you will be browsing to Amazon. And if Amazon is not providing you that information upfront, and if whatever information or product is not coming upfront on the any mobile application or any website, you will scratch your mind. So your application should be designed in such a way that the end user should not think much. They should be very, very clear that what they are purchasing or what activity or what task they are performing in that application. For an example, when I open Microsoft Word, I know that I'll be writing something, I'll be playing with the typography. So all these options are upfront available. I don't need to scratch my mind that where those options are there. Even in the PPT, if you open PowerPoint, at the moment you import any pictures, automatically on the right hand side you will see various options to play around with your pictures, like to change the colors, to change the size, to reduce the opacity. So the application is so intelligent these days that they are helping you. Basically, we don't have any helper who will guide us to use that application. And that's why cognitive loads plays very important. Our design should be designed in such a way that there should be very less cognitive load. You cannot zero the load, because there will be some activity in your mind, because we are human beings, but it should be minimum. Same with the motor load. Now motor load is basically clicks, scrolling. You should not have multiple scroll. You should not hide your information in such a way that user have to click a lot of information. For an example, if you go to if you open your banking website and you logged in and you are searching for your statements, or if you are searching for your bill payment, or you want to add any of your friend or relative as a beneficiary to do money transfer, so that information should be upfront. User should not go multi-level. Menu should not be there. The information should not be hidden in the secondary or primary navigation. So your navigation should be upfront. Basically, the entire usability is on these two principles only. One, to have a minimum cognitive load. The information or task should be upfront. Second, it should have less clicks, less scrolls. Information should be very clear. The navigation should not be confused. Now, how do we do this? To do this, now I'm not talking about banking or insurance. To design a very seamless user experience, you should first understand that domain. Unless or until you don't understand that domain or that subject, you're not able to identify the problem. So that's very important part, which I'm trying to help you guys through this session, that along with your regular studies of design, you should also follow the domains. So because eventually after couple of years, you will be designing best user experience for an automobile company or for a retail company or for a bank, insurance company, or maybe for a startup. But at the end, these are the 6 core domains where you will be implementing the user experience. And we don't know after 5 years what new comes. For an example, in last 2 to 3 years, the payment banks came. Banks is basically Paytm, all these wallets, Google Pay. These are the new digital banks of for us. But how to improve the experience, that is very important, and that's what the domain knowledge come. For an example, if me or my team or any of you are making a banking website, you should know that domain very nicely. If I am creating a insurance portal where my the business requirement is that if someone comes on the website, they should be able to very clearly see what are the various products. Now here products will be life insurance, health insurance, vehicle insurance. So the moment they open the website, they should see the product, they should see the benefits of those products. For an example, they should see that what kind of policy will cover, whether that will be they will be covering me alone or my family, what kind of premium I have to pay monthly. There should be a calculator where I can do. So all these things I'm able to provide only when I understand the domain. Now generally, whenever we work in any IT industry or in a startup or in a design studio, we don't work alone, we work in a team. So we work with domain expert, or in a common language, they are known as business analysts, who are actually expertise in that XYZ domain. They may be expert in automobile or retail or insurance or banking. So we will be always working very closely with these domain experts. And the second team would be technical team. So always make sure that whenever you are defining the user experience, whenever you are creating any design, make sure that that is feasible in the technology world. It should not happen that you have created a very wow design, but when you hand over your design to developer, to the HTML developers or the actual programmers, they will say this is not possible in the technology world. So there should be a collaboration between the BA, the business analyst, the designer, and the developer always. That's the teamwork where you will understand the requirement, understand the domain, understand the problem statement, and then you will define the solution. That's why understanding your domain is very important. Once you know that domain, you will easily, quickly find out the problem statement of the business requirement. Now, how to find a problem statement? We are in the era where everyone is digital. Like if we talk 20 or 30 years before, a lot of processes were manual. People were moving from manual process to computerization. But now it's the time is that already people have using computers or digital solution from 2 decades or 1 decade or for last couple of years. And the industry is changing in such a way that every 6 months there is new technology which is coming, and that's they are bringing innovation. So all the companies are they are changing their application in 2 to 3 years. The life of the application is not more than 3 to 5 years. They have to adopt the new technology because new technologies are bringing more better experience for the end user, and that's called the customer experience. So moving from one technology to other technology is very easy. Now, how do we find a problem statement? And this is the area where heuristic principle comes very importantly. So this 10 heuristic principle, which I'm going to show you in next 2 minutes, these are the 10 principle which we use to do the assessment of any existing digital product. So whenever we start any project, let's say if you get a project, there will be some website, there will be some application, there will be, or probably there will not be a mobile app, but they might be have a website. They will ask you to define the mobile app for them, or maybe their mobile app is old, now they want to move to a new technology. So you already have a digital product, so you have to do an assessment of that product. Now how do you do? So based on this 10 principles, you will assess that product. So these 10 principles are very simple. You have to just see that that principle is implemented or not. If that principle is not implemented, then you will highlight that why it is not implemented, what kind of problem will be there, and then you have to provide the recommendation. It means you have to provide a solution that this task could be very much better, or you can reduce 2 clicks from 4 to 2 clicks if you implement this principle. So you have to provide a lot of concept design. So I'll explain you how we do that. So That's why these three things are very important. Deep knowledge of your domain, whatever domain you're working, understand the problem statement very closely with working with the business analyst or the business stakeholders, and then come up with the solution. I'll move to next slide. Before I move to the heuristic, I just want to quickly, walk through you on the standard user experience process, which is based on the UCD principle, user-centered design methodology. So there are 5 steps. Initially, we do the research. There are various ways of doing research, attitude research, behavior research, like direct research, like, user interview. You recruit the users, try to understand, how they are behaving, try to understand their frustration, what is their expectation from that product. So that's the very simple way of getting the insight from the user. Focus groups, basically a lot of key stakeholders are locked in one room, and they talk on some subject, or they talk on some some task, and then you need to observe various people are talking, and then you will grab information from them. I'm sure these are some activity which you have already learned, or you will be learning in your curriculum, or you have been gone through in other sessions. Card sorting and survey, basically to take information from the end user. Daily study and guerrilla research, where you follow the user. Participation in concept design, you create a concept and give that design to them and see how they are behaving in that new products. Behavioral research, very important, where you observe their behavior. So contextual inquiry. Contextual inquiry is basically, let's say if you go to a bank, you sit with a banker and you observe that how that person is behaving with the system, how that person is creating an account. Account opening is very easy task, or very familiar task for you guys. Whenever we go into bank, we provide this information and we come back. But after that, the back office guys, they take all those information which we have filled in the form, and then they convert those information into the application. So if I am improving the account opening process for a bank, I will do a contextual inquiry. If I got a chance to visit the bank, I will observe that in the current system, whether it's a digital system or it's a manual process, how they are doing. I'll observe everything. I'll document that these are the good things, these are the bad things. So contextual inquiry is very important. Very few designer get this chance. When they do the research, they get a chance to meet the end user, or the customer allows to do this kind of studies. Empathy mapping, again, you are aware that we try to empathize the users and try to map their feelings. Usability and lab studies, there are various ways of testing the product. So every design agency or IT company have their design studios inbuilt. They have various latest technology which we use to do usability studies. Click stream and analysis and A/B stream is basically you come up with two or multiple options, and give those options to customers. So they may like option A, option B, and option C. So that's why you do a A/B testing. Someone will like, out of 10 features, they will like 2 features of design A, 3 features of design B, and same for design C. So finally, you have various options, and then finally you create a next solution. So that's called A/B testing, or a click stream analysis, where you give a prototype to them. They will play around, and you observe whether that particular activity or task is completed as per not. Because initially you have done research, that there were 10 minutes to complete that task, but now with your design, probably it will take 6 or 7 minutes. So you will test this. You have to test your concept with the user. So these kind of click stream analysis and A/B testing helps you. And everything is before coding. You have not given your design to developer, so you are still in your design phase. So that's why these kind of research and analysis is very important. Once you have this information, you will do a lot of research. You will create the journey maps. You will, whatever you have observed, you will try to define in a journey the frustration, the good things, the neutral things, and you will create a presentation, and you will define a new journey and showcase to the stakeholders. And then you start creating your information architecture. You will flow your information in various sections. You will, based on this information, you will define your navigation model, whether it's primary or secondary navigation model, which helps you to create your layout, and that is your concept design. So you have your information, you have your navigations, and then you have your lot of studies which you have done, and you will try to play in a layout. That's called concept design. And lastly, once you have this concept, you will convert into low fidelity or high fidelity wireframe. Low fidelity wireframe is basically a paper sketch or a wireframe which is created in PowerPoint presentation or a black and white layout. It's not a pixel perfect, it's basically just a boxes just to show the layout. Wherein high fidelity is a proper pixel perfect with branding, with visual icons, colors as per accessibility, as per customers branding guideline, interactions. If you are performing some complex scenarios, so the output should be also there, proper clicks. That's called high fidelity wireframes, or high fidelity prototypes, which is actually also a visual design if you are just creating a visual mockups. And finally, you create a visual style guide and UI specification documentation, which is very important for the developers. So your prototype doesn't help them. They need a proper UI specification, that what is the font color, what is the button background, what are the various graphics elements, which is known as visual assets. So this is a standard process which is followed in across industry, whether it's any IT company, whether it's a small studio or a small startup. I'm sure you are aware of this, but I just wanted to, brief you that how a typical IT industry works and where we play an important role. I'll just take 2 minutes pause here so that you can see these are 10 principles. I know we have limited time, but I will quickly give you a example of some of the key principle which we are using in our day-to-day life, and how it changes the experience, how it helps to define a world-class user experience. So visibility of system status, it's a very, very simple example. All of us are using WhatsApp till now. I know in last 1 week, a lot of privacy issue came on WhatsApp, and people are moving to different messaging app like Telegram and Signal. But yeah, in every communication or any chat, you have, whenever you send a message, you are having a flexibility to see whether that message has been delivered, whether that message has been read or not. For example, in WhatsApp, when there is a gray color single tick, it means the message has been sent. When the tick changes into double ticks, two gray color ticks, it means the message has been delivered. And finally, when someone read your message, the gray color ticks converted into blue color. So visual hint is blue color ticks means your message has been read. It means the system, the WhatsApp is giving you the status of your task. So your task was that you are sending a message, hey, to your friend or a family, and you are able to see that whether that message has been sent, whether that had been delivered or read by user. That's the area where visibility of system status is implemented. That's the very, very simple example which we use daily. The another example is whenever we do any banking, if you guys do online banking, or if you use your mobile apps, if you do a money transfer, or if you do a bill payment, after doing that you get a message, either a success message or a failure message. If you have paid xyz amount to a ABC person, you will say, let's say 100 rupees has been paid to so and so account or so and so account number. That is the area where the visibility of system status principle is implemented, so that users should know that they have performed some task and the completion of that task is positive or negative. Sometimes the task fail. For an example, if you don't have sufficient balance in your account, or probably there's a technical issue, the money is not transferred, so you get an error message. So again, the task is incomplete, but the system is helping you to show the status of your task, which is negative this time. For an example, even if you're sending a message to WhatsApp and your internet is down, the message will not go. So you will see a different red color icon. It means the system is helping you. So that's a very simple example of visibility of system status. User control and freedom. Again, a very good example. If you scroll a website, let's say if you open any portal and you scroll down, you will see a arrow on the right hand side to go on top. So you are giving a freedom to user to go to top, go to bottom, or let's say these days in many marketing websites or product based companies website, you have a chat bot. You can easily chat with the call center. So you have a fixed icon on the right hand side at the bottom. So that's the user control design principle is implemented, so that user have a control anytime, they have a flexibility to perform any other task. Error prevention, very important principle, especially in banking and insurance industry. uh, uh, Banking and insurance industry mostly is on forms. You have to provide a lot of information, you have to feed data entry, and form usability comes into picture. You have to chunk your forms, like if I want to purchase an insurance, I have to fill minimum in India, I'm talking about India business right now, minimum I have to fill around 90 to 95 fields. I have to provide multiple information. I have to provide my demographic detail, my family detail, my salary details, my health records, and everything I need to fill in the form. Now, in such scenario, if I miss some information, if I'm in hurry, I do a wrong formatting. Instead of first name and last name, I added my last name as first name, or I change the date format. And if I click on submit button, my entire form will be red. So but that's a wrong way of giving the information, because I have filled the entire form. So the best way is to improve the experience is you do error prevention. Now, how do you do? Let's say you have a field of your phone number, and there's a specific format in India of 10-digit phone number. You cannot enter the character in that. The moment you enter character, the system should allow it. It should give you error message there itself that only numerical data is allowed. Or for an example, if you are providing your date of birth and there's a format of DDMMYY, means date, month, and year, but you are adding in a different format. Let's say you're adding month, date, and year. So that particular field will become red color. There will be some icon which will give you a visual hint that the format is wrong, or probably there will be a pop-up. So if you provide such kind of notification upfront while filling the form, that's the better experience, irrespective of if you provide at the end when you fill the entire form and click on submit button, and then you see huge list of errors, whatever fields you have missed, or you have added a wrong data, or wrong format. I'll not take much time on this, but there are some other feature like consistency and standards. This is a principle which is very important for visual designer, for the students who are learning visual communication. Your icons should be same. If you are defining a lined icon, there are two kind of icons: lined icons and filled icons. Filled icons are basically where you have a background color. Lined icon is an icon where you have only borders, but the internal is white color or any other color, but you have only borders. So if you are using filled icon, your entire application should have a filled icon. If you are defining a lined icon, your entire application should have a lined icon. It should not be that your home page has a different icon, your about page is having a different icon. So that's why your consistency should be there. If you are defining the primary button should be always red color, or let's say it should be always blue color. So all your primary buttons in the application should be same in color. The size of the font, the title should be same. So that's the principle of consistency and standard. You should follow this across. Again, aesthetical and minimal design. Your design should be very simple. It should not be catered. It should not have much information. Only provide that information which is there. Now, so if you want to know more about this 10 principle, please follow NN group, Nielsen Norman group. This principle are created by Jacob Nielsen, and you will see a lot of information about this principle. And trust me, if you as a designer, if you learn this principle, if you know this principle, and if you implement this in your design will be very effective. A lot of designers doesn't follow this. I'll be very honest. A lot of people doesn't follow this. A lot of seasoned designer doesn't know this principle. I'm not sure if these 10 principles are part of your design curriculum. But based on my previous experience, a lot of institute doesn't have this. They give very high level information, but if you go to Nielsen Norman's website, you will see all this. Or if you Google 10 heuristic principle, you will get information. I'll show you a very simple examples, which probably you are aware in. So everyone use Google Drive, My Drive. Now, this is an example of visibility of status. Like I gave you two example, one of your money transfer status, the other example I gave of WhatsApp. Now this is another example where the user is uploading some image and they are able to see the status, that how much the image has been uploaded, whether it's 30%, 50%. So this this visual hint of that blue color, it's ended. So the visibility of system status is implemented in this solution. Let's say if my Google Drive or any of this collaborative drives, if they are not implementing the system, the user will not aware. They have uploaded the document, whether it's a MP3 file or a PNG or a video, but they don't know what is happening. They will see just a white screen, so they will be confused. Probably they will close the window or close the app. So and the task will be incomplete, and that's a bad user experience. That's why if you implement system status everywhere, wherever you need, your user, the end user will be happy, and that's the at the end your customer satisfaction is important. Consistency and standard, as I said, in this example there are two buttons, a blue button on the right hand and orange button on the left hand side. So they have defined two buttons. Now your entire application should use same button only. So when you use these buttons everywhere, in wherever it is required, your application will look very simple, very minimalistic design, very sober. A lot of people, they make, sometimes in one page the button is 100 pixel, in some page it's 50 pixel, so design is not consistent. So that's why you have to follow the standards. Recognize rather than recall. This is an example where so I came to a website or I came to app, I came to do certain activity, but then I forgot that there are multiple activities. So based on analytics, based on personalization or machine learning, these days application are suggesting that what you can do. So for an example, this is a Quora website, which is a review based website, gives you a review of various companies. So it's suggesting that based on whatever you type, automatically it's giving you some suggestions. So the user doesn't need to think. The system is automatically giving you some suggestions. That if, let's say for example, if you go to Amazon and if you type Apple iPhone, you will see a type ahead list where they will give you entire product catalog, accessories, phones, everything related to Apple. So that's the principle of recognize rather than recall is implemented. Error prevention, again, we have given I have given an example. This is an example of Google, that how Google helps to, stop the error prevention. The last example, which is help and documentation. Always, provide some help documentation. For an example, if you create a form, you should always give a visual hint. You should always give a message that, your password should be 10 character with multiple maximum 10 character with multi-character, one alphanumeric, one number. So that kind of help will always give a good user experience to the end. In many applications we have to provide documentations, like what is how this application is going to work. Like in this example, this is a GoDaddy help page, basically a website, hosting website. So they have given all these various features by default, that if you want to call a call center, if you have a technical issue, so they are upfront giving this information on their page. So that's why they are helping the user. So the user doesn't need to search, they don't need to click multiple. So overall, to summarize, if you implement this 10 principle in small pieces, your cognitive load is reduced, your motor load is reduced, and that's why your end user is happy. He will come again to a website. He will never, he will never hate your product. And that's the beauty of this principle, and that's why I'm, emphasizing that this is very important principles. I specifically, brought Google Pay here because I'm sure all of you are using Google Pay. How the heuristic principles are implemented in various ways. So for example, the first, flexibility and efficiency of use and consistency and standard, which is used in the default page of the Google Pay. So whenever you open Google Pay, you will see an option whether you can do a bank transfer, or whether you have to pay through phone number, or you have to do a QR scan, or you have to do a self transfer to yourself only. So Google Pay is upfront showing the various options. I don't need to search. So, and that's the principal flexibility and efficiency of use. So efficiency is very much important in usability or in user experience. Without any motor load, without clicking anywhere, without scratching my mind, means without co- cognitive load, I am able to see what are the various services which Google Play has. Google Pay has. At the same time, you will see that they have properly, implemented the consistency. They have maintained the consistency. Their icons are blue color background and white color lined icon on top. So all the 4 icons are like that only. It's not that one is color, one has a different color, or one is filled, one is non-filled. The other option, recognize rather than recall. This is basically, I am just typing. Let's say I want to give money to someone, some Aditya or someone name of Aditi. So I am just typing ADI. Automatically a type ahead search feature comes. I just hidden these numbers of my friends and family, but basically you will see I typed ADI. I can see number of Aditi Kamath. ADI is in some Adhikari, Aditya Medical. Automatically this is there. So I don't need to do much. I don't need to recognize to whom I have to do. I just type something and automatically a type ahead search comes. This is the same feature which is in Amazon or which is in the Google search. Help and documentation. It also a lot of application by default provide your analytic based data or based on your history. So for example, I have paid to this shop which is Pushparaj Missile. I have paid some money to one of my friend Rajesh Munde. I have paid some money to some Suresh Pethe. So automatically it is giving me that list because this is based on my history. So tomorrow if I wanted to pay I wanted to see that what kind of transaction I have done with Mr. Suresh Pete, or let's say with Mr. Rajesh Munde, or again I have to pay them. So automatically the application is helping me. And the last option is visibility of system status and user control. Again, this is an example where I have paid 284 rupees to a medical shop. So it is the green color tick is telling me or giving me a visual hint that I have paid 284 at this time at this date. So that's give me a confidence, that give me a trust that my money has been paid to that person. So that's the visibility of system status. The another principle which is implemented here is user control and freedom. So for example, I can pay to Aditya Medical, but I can also request XYZ amount. So for example, I need to borrow some money from my brother or from my any of my friend. So what I'll do, I'll just open his name. Obviously that he or she should have a Google Pay in using, they should be using that application. I will just click on request. It will ask me what I am requesting. I will say, let's say 1,000 rupees. So a message will go to the, let's say to Aditya Medical, that Kapil Joshi is asking for 1,000 rupees. So I don't need to call him. I don't need to, go to him and ask to give a transfer. He will just get a notification that Kapil Joshi is asking for 1,000 rupees. Do you want to pay? He will say yes. If you want to pay, he will pay yes. It will ask the password and I will get the 1,000 rupees. Only in few seconds or in 1 minute, I will get the money. That's the beauty of these principles, that how the user experience is so important. Again, if you just observe Google Pay or Amazon or any of your banking application very nicely, you will see all this 10 principles are implemented at many places. It can be one to many relation, many to one. Like for example, one task can have 2-3 principle, or somewhere you cannot even implement any of the principle. So that's why these principles are really very important. You can Google it. You will see a lot of examples. There are very various case studies are uploaded in the NN Group website. So this was the end of session. I know I was a little bit fast, but I think let's start the Q&A, and I want that if someone has any question of any of this topic or any other queries related to designing how UX can play important role in banking and insurance industry, any questions related to your career, any question related to how IT companies works, how banking domain works. Sai, we have only 5 minutes, right?
Yes, sir. Yes. Anyone? Any questions?
Students, that a lot of points that you covered are essentially, what students should also learn in their classrooms. So I think they were very relevant points.
Yeah, but I don't see people are asking question, and that's I wanted to have.
No, I also think that there could be a situation where they are processing all this information
Right,
as
right.
well.
Yeah,
In fact, there were quite a few interesting pointers that I picked up as well. And if you ask me, I personally don't have a lot of questions at the outset because this, you once you process this information and see where do you implement this, it takes a little time, and I'm sure that students will bug you, offline on LinkedIn maybe, or email to ask you questions. But yeah, if there are one or two questions, let's take them.
yeah.
Anyone?
Guys, please don't shy. You can ask any silly question. I know this is very much complex information which I have shared. I was a little bit fast with the respect of time, but yeah, please ask anything.
Oh,
Don't
sir,
shy.
I have a question.
Yeah, Dhaval.
Sir, like in all social media apps we use, like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, there is a common thing like the messaging, the DM portion is on the top right corner, and everything else in on the bottom. So, is there any rule or like that it should be on the top right, or like that we cannot put in top left or in the bottom?
Okay, so Dhaval, very good question, and I would like to tell you that that there is no such rule. It's basic, and I believe you're talking from a mobile approach, like especially when
Yes,
you're.
we have
So
mobile.
see, having a default picture or your profile on the right top, which generally we call as a toolbox, like you have your sign out, my profile, setting sign of activity. So someone when this web www or webcom web.coms came in early 2000 or late 90s. At that point, someone, the initial folks who created this design, they thought like this sign out should be on the right hand side, and that's the way the people started following. Even if you see from a usability, it is very key information, but it doesn't take a lot of help. Like, I'll do an example. uh, uh, 15 years before, when there was websites, there was no login, like all the information were upfront. But then when the information became more confidential, when this e-commerce came into picture, like I still remember uh, when Amazon was also there, and initially all the retail portals, mostly in North America, they used to just keep a login button on the right hand side, and when you click on login, it takes you to a page, a new page which just have a login. But eventually people provided login there itself. Like, if when you click on login, you will get the username and password, small pop-up or a light box there itself. Then slowly people don't even ask the login. They will ask login only when you do your payment. They don't stop you. You are by default continued as a guest login, and the moment you do the payment, at that time they ask you the login, and even they don't take you a separate login. A light box comes. Same way, people started taking that right top corner as a place where you can have your profiles, your settings, your personalization. So that's the way. There is no rule, but yes, people started. The other question which you asked, that why the other navigation at the bottom. So there the usability is there, because for an example, whenever you open your mobile, your thumb, which is your main object of your body, which plays around with your app. So having a key navigation at the bottom really helps, because if you if you hold your mobile phone like this, and if your key primary navigations are always on top, you have to go up, you have to do a lot of physical movement. But the bottom area is very much accessible. You can go either your navigation is on the left hand side or right hand side. That's why you will see a lot of a mobile phone approach where mobile first is implemented and they have the primary or the secondary navigation at the bottom only. And also in mobile, there are two kinds of apps, hybrid apps and native apps. Native apps are basically the apps which have the native feature of that phone. So for example, this is the iPhone. So 70 to 80% features are inbuilt in the iPhone. I have to, as a designer, I have to use those features. As a mobile developer, the developer will use those features. So iPhone started the bottom navigation sections, like, and they did a research that when the touch phone, this kind of touch phone was launched in 2007 when Mr. Steve Jobs launched this phone. The thought process, the user mindset was changing. We were habitual of using the QWERTY keyboard phone where you have to just type. No one was visualizing that your computer will be on a phone. So that's why they brought this idea that your thumb is accessible whether you are a right hand or your left hand. Your thumb can be accessible only on the bottom very easily. And these days we have big phones, so it's very difficult. Just try to imagine if you have your primary navigation on the top. That's why your primary navigation or secondary is there, in a tertiary navigation which you will use very rarely are on the top. And then improvement happened for better user experience. Either there is a drop down menus, or you click, it goes to next page, and then you have a list of activities. So that's the reason. I believe I was able to give you answer. I think this is the approach, but there is no rule for the top. But yeah, there is a usability standards for better usability and accessibility. The primary navigations are always on the bottom. And one more thing which you might have observed, that hamburger menu, the 3 lines that is known as hamburger. In some application that is on the left hand side. In some application it is on the right hand side. You will see a lot of white papers and blogs and discussion happening over the internet that we should keep the hamburger menu on the left hand side or on the right hand side. But again, it depends on the user, or again it depends on the how your usage is. And that's why your user research is very important. You need to understand your user groups, what is their age, whether they are senior citizen, they are in your mid 40s or 50s, they are young youth like you. So based on their behavior, and when you do the behavior study, then you will understand.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
So there's a question in the chat box. Anvesha Dubey has asked a question.
Let me see the chat box. If most of the good user experience designs have already applied Jacob Nielsen principle, then what kind of modification can be made after that? How does one find their next problem statement? Okay, so Anvesha, it's not that if you apply the Jacob Nielsen's principles, your application will be very good. There are other design principles like, principles are the quickest or fastest way of doing an assessment of your application. This is known as the there is a process which is known as heuristic evaluation. So as I said, that we do the usability check or usability assessment of existing digital products or website by using this principle. So that's why it is called as fastest way of doing usability testing through this 10 principle. What I mean to say here is that if you use this 10 principle thoroughly in your design, and not 10, maybe 60 to 70%, and I'm sure in every scenario, every task, you will have some or more principle, your experience will be better. But at the same time, you have to apply the other principles also, like you have to apply the navigation model, you have to apply the content strategy, you have to apply the Fitts law. All this, design principle also need to be applied. But it's not necessary that in every task your principle will match. It probably in some of the tasks you don't need to apply that. It doesn't, it's not relevant. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I have a question.
Yes,
my question is a little bit, may not be exactly related to design, but I want to know, from when did you start seeing or notice a change or banking companies and financial institutions moving towards better design and better user experience from before?
This change, the main bigger change came into industry after the mobile. The iPhone was launched in 2007 when big phone came. People followed iPhone, like Samsung brought big tabs and phone, and people started using phones for their day-to-day activity. So the usage of mobile increased, and that's force these banking industries to change, at least for the customer facing application. Now we are the end user, we are using their apps and their website for mobile banking. But for I would like to add that banking and insurance companies are the early sectors to use the computers. They are using computers since almost like 40 years now, or I would say like 50 years, from 1960 or early days of computer, when there is a application called as AS400 or mainframe application. The application like DOS prompt, everything is black, and those kind of applications are still in the banking and insurance industry. Like yesterday I was talking to Sai and Madhumita, like these applications are still there. Lot of big insurance companies are still using this mainframe application. They are not changing because the user group is very old. Those guys are like almost like 50 years and 55 or 60 years. They are senior citizens, and these applications are very fast. They give the data very fast. But the change started from early 2000 when people started moving to web, from this desktop application to web. At that time, there was no responsive because mobile was not in market. People were moving from desktop native applications to web-based application. Then the other change came in after 2007 or 8 when mobile came into picture, and especially after 2010, mobile was default. So mobile application started. And recently, like in last couple of 5-6 years, when cloud is more important now, today people doesn't need to go to office. They can access their application from anywhere because their applications are hosted on the cloud networks. So they can access from their mobile phone, their tablet, their personal laptops. They just need to have a proper access either through VPN or their username and password. So changes are coming. The major change came in early 2000 when people moved from native application to web-based. The second drastic transformation project started when mobile came. Responsive portals got created in late 2010-9, and then now since last couple of years, every year there's a change. For an example, in last 10 months, you will not believe, people are moving to digital technology more, because this 10 months, this pandemic has gave an opportunity to all these companies to bring innovation. Can you believe that today I am sitting in Pune, you are sitting in your area, there are 150 plus people here across country. We are talking in I'm just helping you guys. This is your academic session, and you are taking from your home. We didn't imagine this 15 years, or actually at least I didn't imagine when I was studying like 15-20 years before. But this kind of change is happening, and that's why these institutes like Baiju and all those online education is becoming very important now. Same way in banking and insurance, you will see a lot of changes happening. Like let me give a very recent example. Amazon Pay. Amazon Pay is a credit card or payment option provided by various banking institutions. In India, it is collaborated with ICICI Bank. If you open your Amazon mobile app, you will see somewhere an option of Amazon Pay. Just apply for that. You will see, for a normal process, whenever you apply for a credit card, you have to provide your documentation. Your KYC needs to be done, your Aadhaar card, your PAN card, your salary proofs, your address proofs. You have to go to bank, you have to provide those, or the agent comes at your place, they take a signature. But in the pandemic, what happened? Amazon Pay implemented a service which is known as eKYC. So if I apply for Amazon Pay ICICI Bank credit card through Amazon app, I can get my credit card in just 5 minutes, and I did this. So what I did, I went there. They already have my details, like my first name, last name, my email address. They fetched from that. They asked me to connect. There was an option, either a physical KYC where the agent will come at my place in next couple of years within 7 days, or there's an option of eKYC. I opted for the eKYC. The moment I click next, a video call was set up with a call center executive somewhere in Chennai. They were able to see me. I was able to see them. They asked me to show me my Aadhaar card. I showed my Aadhaar card like this. You're able to see this. For example, this is my Aadhaar card. They took the picture of my Aadhaar card. I showed my PAN card. They took the picture, and then they asked me to do a signature on a blank white paper by my front camera. So they took my Aadhaar. They took my picture. They validated that this is Kapil Joshi. They took my signature. The eKYC was done immediately with the UID because they had all my Aadhaar detail. And after 2 days, after 48 hours, within 36 hours, I got my Amazon ICICI credit card. I never imagined that buying a credit card, sitting at home in 5 minutes. And this technology came, it was an innovation, or it was a born, due to pandemic. So why I gave this example, that the technology is shifting every month. Every month you will see new things is coming. If you very, very closely follow Amazon or Flipkart or any other very known websites, you will see changes happening every month. Every month they are changing small things in their portals or application, and everywhere there is a user experience. It's not only one man show. There's a team of domain experts who explain the business. There's a team of designers who helps and create to do a creative solution. There's a team of technical architects. There's a team of all these technology experts. So it's a combination of technology, innovation, business, and that's what the entire customer experience. And we as a designer, and in future you guys as a designer, will play a very important role. That's why I even when we do campus hiring, or when we convert engineers into designers in our training, I empathize to follow. They should follow all these analyst website like Gartner's, then Nielsen Group's website. They give a lot of research paper. Also follow a lot of technology magazines. Like you will see a lot of magazines. Follow all big four companies like Deloitte and PwC. They provide a lot of consulting news. This will help you to understand how much important is user experience and technology. Because if eventually you are going to join an IT company or design studio, everywhere you will have technology and expert guys. So you need to know. You should create your portfolio in such a way that the interviewer who is hiring you, he should be able to place you immediately in a one or 2 weeks, because you are already aware of these things. Obviously your design professor, they will teach you design, but you have to learn all this thing outside. You have to do self-learning, and this kind of session I think will help you. I hope, Anvisha, I was able to answer you with some classic example.
It's Suchira, sir, and thank you, sir. You did.
Sorry, Suchira. Anyone else? We are 20 minutes ahead of our session.
So we can conclude, I think.
Sorry.
So as we near the end of this session, couldn't hear you, sir.
I'm not able to hear you. Can you please? Your voice is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So as we near the end of this session, I would like to thank you, sir, for taking out the time and sharing your thoughts with us. UX has a lot of untapped potential, and it was great to understand UX in the financial space. We wish you the best of luck for all your future endeavors. So moving on to the next mentoring segment, I request the selected students to be ready with their questions for the exclusive talk with Kapil sir. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for giving this opportunity. I hope this was very helpful. I know for a lot of people it went, almost like above 5,000 feet, but you can connect me anytime. My email ID is very simple, kapiljoshi@gmail. Many of you have added me on LinkedIn, or you can, directly, reach through Sai or Madhusmita, or with your, student coordination panel. Thank you. All the best for your next sessions and your regular classes.